Welcome to another episode of the Co-op Connection Podcast. Today we are joined by Kerry Jones from Goff Companies to discuss when a church should start planning a building project and the many ways Goff can help from start to finish. We hope you enjoy.
Kerry, nice to have you with us today. We're excited about the conversation that we're going to be able to have with you. And just one thing that we kind of like to start out with in these interviews is, if you would, just give us a brief background on Goff, and specifically with how you guys work in connecting churches with their mission.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me today. It's really nice to be here. We have enjoyed our relationship with the church co-op for many years. And Goff Companies, we're a family-owned company, and we are church builders. So we build churches across the country. We've built about $800 million of churches to date, but we do more than build. We do a lot of planning to help churches get prepared to build, and that's really the mission aspect of our team, because we don't want to just be the people who come in and erect a facility, bricks and mortar, steel. We want to actually be a partner with the church. Our hope is to remove barriers in church facilities that limit growth. And so we talk a lot about a balanced facility. You ask how we fit into the mission of the church. That's kind of it. Does the church have a lid in their facility? We try to identify what that is, and then for a least reasonable cost, remove that barrier. Because our idea, it's not unique to us, is that healthy things grow. And when churches are healthy, they will grow until they hit a lid in their facility. And that might be in the parking lot, it might be in the children's area, it might be in an education area, it might be seats in the worship room. So we're trying to identify what those are and then help them move beyond.
Yeah, that's good, because I think a lot of construction companies, obviously they're fine with just coming in and saying, okay, you want a building built, let's go ahead and do that, here's a bid, get it done. But then down the road for the ministry, that wasn't a smart move. So I think that it's definitely encouraging to know that you guys are going to take time to talk through these things with each ministry, because they're all unique, and really get to know them. One of the things that you mentioned is that you guys are builders specifically for churches. So I think maybe some people might have a question like, wow, if you just do churches, how can you sustain? But correct me if I'm wrong, but Goff's been around for about 30 years, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So Billy Goff is our founder, and Billy built the first church in 1996.
Wow.
It'll be 30 years next year. And since then, we've built about $800 million of church facilities, which is a lot of churches.
Yeah.
And, churches are really unique because it's not just an education building. It's not just a office and a sanctuary. I mean, you have to have the theatrical piece in a lot of churches, AVL. You got to have hospitality, kitchens, and dining. And so there's a lot of things involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. It's good to hear that y'all are sticking to the main thing and what you've done for 30 years. Because since 2020, there's been so many businesses that just try to branch out. They try to do whatever they can, however they can, to stay afloat, and then they end up compromising in the long run what they were once really good at. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are sticking to what you do and really trying to help these churches, remain going forward and pursuing that mission.
It's really interesting. COVID changed so much, the pandemic, and we were really anxious about what might happen to churches because, for a while we weren't even allowed to go to meet together. But since then, at least in the areas where we have been working, we see churches exploding. Just the exponential growth. And what we have found is that, when times are good, people will go to church. But when times are bad, even more people will go to church.
Yeah.
And, people reach out to God. And so we see churches just all across, especially the southeast, southwest, Midwest area of the country are just growing leaps and bounds.
So with Goff, I know that you do a lot with coming alongside each church with their leaders and helping planning, helping with budget and things like that. So what is some advice that you would give maybe pastor or leaders on considering a new building project?
First of all, first I would tell them start the process early, but find a team that has church experience. It's not a building and a process that just anybody can do. And I would recommend don't hire an architect or a builder that does not have church experience. That's one. The other is figure out what you need. Pastors are great at building people, but not necessarily at building buildings. So find someone who can help with that process. And I was an executive pastor for about 20 years. I went through a couple of building programs, and what I found was I was looking for answers when in fact I didn't even know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
I didn't know what do I need? Well, what are my people ratios?
Right. Yeah.
How many square feet do I need per person? How many parking spaces do I need for the number of seats? So I didn't even know what the right questions were, and much less the answer. So find a team that can help you, somebody that's been through it, that can help you identify what those questions are.
All right, Kerry, you actually made a really good point there about churches needing to start early when it comes to expanding. Could you just share with our audience a little bit about the SAFE program and maybe just some of the reasons why it would be important to be getting with someone like you to start thinking ahead for expansions and different projects?
Yeah, so church expansion projects are complicated. They're very complicated, and it takes a while to get it done. And it's not just the design and construction, but it's also going through church governance. It's raising money. It's finding a lending partner, all of that together. We typically see that process take about 2.5 years. So we really enjoy getting involved with a church the moment they realize they're out of space somewhere. Maybe they've plateaued in growth. Maybe they still have seats in the worship room, but they've plateaued their growth. Or maybe they're having an attendance cycle that goes up and then comes back down and up and comes back down. That's a classic sign of a lid in the building. So we want to get involved that early, before an architect and before a builder are engaged. We wrote a process. I was an executive pastor for a long time, and so we wrote this process as if we were an extension of the staff. We look at the project from the eyesight of a builder, a designer, ministry, and finance and real estate. Those are the 5 areas that the church has to include in what their planning process is. So we call it a strategic assessment for facility expansion, SAFE, and it takes about 2 or 3 months to complete. We look at the demographics of the church. We look at where their people are coming from. We look at how they are using the building right now. We document the vision of leadership. That do they want to grow as big as they can on the piece of property they have, or do they want to do satellites, or do they want to plant churches somewhere? What is that vision for what they want to accomplish? We're documenting that. We're looking at their ratios. I would tell every pastor that is looking to build, there's 2 primary ratios that they need to document. One is how many cars do you have based on the number of people that are in the worship room, and how many children are in another part of the building during worship and how many adults are in that worship room. That's a ratio, adult to children. That's a very important ratio. And parking, because that's going to help drive square footage and land that you need.
Yeah.
So we're identifying those. Then we look at growth trends, attendance trends, both in the worship room and in the children's area, so that we can project out how far you can grow. When you move into a new facility, if you have 500 people and you move into a 2,000 seat room, that's a lack of energy. Mm-hmm. You don't need that, but you don't need 600 seats either. What's that balance? What are we trying to figure out? Mm-hmm. And with that, the kids also, how much children's space do you need in order to fill that room? Because if you don't have enough children's space, you can't fill the seats in the worship room. So we're looking at that balance, and we're looking at trends. How long will this last? And everything we do includes an expansion strategy. So we think probably doubling the size of where you are now, and then probably a strategy to expand that later, maybe double.
Yeah.
But also, what are they going to do? Where are they going to worship while that expansion goes on?
Exactly.
They can't just stop. So we're identifying those growth trends. Then we spend a lot of time with a financial piece of it, because it's such a huge thing for churches. So my background is in finance before I went into ministry. We are helping them set a funding strategy from the very beginning. We're helping them identify how much money they could raise for a project, helping them figure out what would be their maximum borrowing capacity and how would that impact their budget. We're looking at how much of their existing cash could they put into a project and still remain healthy. Mm-hmm. How can they tweak their expense structure to create more room in their existing budget? So we're doing all of those before we ever start design. But we're trying to figure out what's the strategy to fund this project. And then when we go into design, only design to what you can afford. Now there might be some add alternates or some expansion on that. We're in the church business. Faith is an element in everything that we do, but there also is a reality that we have to work towards. And so we want to include that faith element in it, but we also want to only do what is going to be able to be built, because there's no sense in spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on architectural drawings that cannot be built. That's just poor stewardship.
Right. What if there's a church right now that's kind of hitting that lid? What is some advice that you'd give them?
Yeah, there's several things, but we talk to churches all the time that they don't really know what to do. They realize we're out of worship center seating, or we're out of children's space, or we need to do something, we don't know what to do. That's the ideal time for us to get involved in this planning piece. Mm-hmm. There's several things that I would recommend to churches. If you only have a single worship service, add another one. Most churches cannot financially expand until they have 2 worship services, at least 2, and one of them is 60 to 70% full, and the other one is 40 to 50% full. Because when you expand your worship room, you're probably going to want to double the size of it, and just financially getting there is difficult until you have a critical mass of people. So that's one thing, have a couple of worship services, because that gives you, that's free space when you do that. Now, in order to do that, you have to have a flow of people. So you may need a little bit larger commons area. Maybe that's what is the first thing to do, is just to increase your people flow. Mm-hmm. Or we'll look at your ministry model. From a financial perspective, I would recommend that churches begin working some margin into their budget. Churches are nonprofits, and when we have X number of dollars in revenue, we're going to spend X number of dollars plus one. Mm-hmm. That's just what we do. We find ways to spend it. I would say look at your budget and try to find a way and start paying yourself a mortgage and putting it into an account, an escrow account. If it's 2% of your revenue, 5%, 10%, whatever that number is, that way when you get ready, not only do you have some cash to help you start, you are also disciplined enough to show a lender that you can fund debt service. So those are things that you can do right now. We can start an assessment process, at any time. It takes about 2 or 3 months to do. We offer that at a 50% discount to church co-op members.
Yeah.
And we look at the church and their project from the eyes of design, construction, ministry, finance, and real estate. And in all of those areas, I think that's probably one thing that makes us unique, that we have the expertise in all of those areas to help. And bring us in. I mean, it doesn't cost anything for us to come have a conversation and see. Oftentimes when we come out of that assessment process, John, our recommendation is not yet. And you don't very often hear a church builder say, wait.
Right.
But we can tell you what needs to be done to get ready. It may be increase attendance. It may be find a piece of property. It's a lot less expensive to purchase an existing building and remodel it than it is to develop a property, because then you have to bring in utilities and you have to do all the paving and all of the site work that you don't have to if you already have that in place. So look for that building if there's anything in the area.
Okay.
So.
All right, Kerry. Well, I appreciate you coming and taking time to speak with us today, and we're thankful for our partnership and all that you do.
We love it. We love what the church co-op does. We have very like-minded ministry philosophy, and that is that we're here to serve God's church.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Co-op Connection Podcast. To learn more about Goff Companies or the Church Co-op, please visit our website, www.churchcoop.org.